I'm Phil Rickaby, and I've been a writer and performer for almost 30 years. But I've realized that I don't really know as much as I should about the theatre scene outside of my particular Toronto bubble. Now, I'm on a quest to learn as much as I can about the theatre scene across Canada. So join me as I talk with mainstream theatre creators you may have heard of and indie artists you really should know, as we find out just what it takes to be stage-worthy. If you value the work that I do on Stageworthy, please consider leaving a donation either as a one-time thing or on a recurring monthly basis. Stageworthy is created entirely by me, and I give it to you free of charge with no advertising or other sponsored messages. Your continuing support helps me to cover the cost of producing and distributing the show. Just 4 people donating $5 a month would help me cover the cost of podcast hosting alone. Help me continue to bring you this podcast. You can find a link to donate in the show notes, which you can find in your podcast app or at the website at stageworthy.ca. Now, on to the show. Kimberly Beaune is the owner and event storyteller at Creative Twist Incorporated. She has also been a director, designer, and producer for the award-winning Keystone Theatre. Most recently, she took over the day-to-day management of the Scott Block, a vintage black box theatre and cabaret space in Red Deer, Alberta. She joined me to talk about the intersection of events and theatre, how she found her way to the theatre, and working to make theatre a cornerstone of the community in Red Deer. Here's our conversation. Kim, thanks for joining me. There's a lot that I want to cover with you, but just to start out, one of the reasons that was the impetus for this conversation is that your company, Creative Twist, basically took over the management of the Scott Block Theatre in Red Deer, Alberta. So I'm curious,
Yes.
what led to that happening?
Yeah. So when we first moved to Red Deer, obviously, as you know, my husband is a theater guy and artistic director of Prime Stock Theater. So we sort of wanted to get the lay of the land on what theater spaces were available. And we got a tour of this lovely vintage black box theater. And at the time, it was being operated by Jenna Goldade from Bullskit, which is a improv comedy group. And so Jenna had been working in managing the space for a number of years, but since COVID, she had a second baby and she had a lot of things to focus on in her world. So she was looking for an opportunity to move out of managing the space and just use the space as a renter. So she was hoping that Prime Stock would be able to take it over. And we floated the idea around a little bit, but the reality is Prime Stock just didn't have the bandwidth as a not-for-profit, no employees, all volunteer, to make that happen. And I just thought, you know what, this space needs some love. And it had this great retail office space that was vacant, right connected to the theater, right next to it with the storefront. And I thought I could see Creative Twist in there. I could see me running my creative event business there, but also helping to run Prime Stock, helping to create some energy downtown, which downtown Red Deer really needs some life and some energy, especially post COVID. And I just couldn't see this beautiful little space not um, giving getting the lift that it needed. So I threw caution to the wind and put a proposal together and sent it off. This is kind of a Hail Mary. You don't know me from Adam, but I'm hoping that I can do this. And yeah, it took about 3 or 4 months of back and forth negotiating with them, but yeah, we made it happen.
Nice. Now it's a sort of it's a black box, but it's a vintage. Like what? Tell me about this space.
So the building was built in 1914,
Mm.
and it has been used for many different things. Retail store, department store. It was the old fields in Red Deer many many moons ago when I was just a young pup. Um, it was an apartment building, and for the last 15 or so years, it has operated as a theater venue. So the owner of the building, he's actually Doug Anderson. He's actually the CEO of PV Mart. He and his family purchased the building um, as a social enterprise. So the idea is to make it an affordable space for the creative community in Red Deer. There are offices upstairs that lots of not-for-profits use, as some um, for-profit businesses have rented space there as well. But the idea is, they're not looking to make money on this building. They're looking to have this building as a social enterprise opportunity for the creative community in Red Deer.
Now I don't know Red Deer.
Yes.
I've spent all of I think, as you're aware, when we were between fringes way back in 2012, from
Yeah.
Calgary to Edmonton, I think we might have spent about an hour to 2 hours in Red Deer on a break. During
Yep.
the long drive between Calgary and Edmonton, so I'm not familiar with the arts scene in Red Deer or Red Deer at all. What is the arts slash theater scene like in Red Deer?
You know what? It's the arts community is actually really quite vibrant. A lot of visual art, a lot of um, uh, like painters and visual artists. Um, there is the Central Alberta Theatre, which is long-standing community theatre group, has been in Red Deer for 30 plus years. So they do dinner theater. They do community theater uh, programming. There is Treehouse Youth Theater, which is a fabulous group that does theater training, and shows for people 17 and under. And there's another community theater group called Red Deer Players, who are like I said, a, a smaller than Cat community theater group. They do a little bit more edgier work and a little bit more challenging work. Um, and then there's Prime Stock, which is Red Deer's only professional theater company. They do Shakespeare in the Square, or Shakespeare um, in the park during the summer. It's called Bard on Bower, and then are expanding to do two um, other types of theater: contemporary in the spring and classical theater in the fall. And those are both happening here at the Scott Block. Um, so Red Deer, I'm sorry, the Central Alberta Theatre CAT, they have taken over the Memorial Centre, which is the big roadhouse, I would say, in Red Deer. So they've taken over that space, and they also do dinner theater in a place called Festival Hall, which is attached to the Memorial Center. Um, yeah, so it's coming back. It's been a long, hard haul for as all arts communities in across the world really have struggled in the past with COVID. Things are coming back. Um, we uh, we're hoping to get audiences back off their couches, uh, and away from Netflix and into live theater spaces again. Um, Bullskit, they've been they're in their 15th season. Doing improv and sketch comedy here, and they're starting to get people out again, starting to have that energy, which is fantastic.
Getting the arts and theater thriving again in a place that's there's not a small town, it's a city, but it's also, it's not a big city, it's
No.
a city. That has to present some unique challenges to a place, especially as you're saying, to a downtown that I imagine is itself struggling to
Yeah.
come back from COVID. If looking at the city where I live, Toronto, is anything to compare to, there's a lot of stores and just things to do that just didn't make it through the pandemic,
Yeah.
and the closures, empty storefronts, things like that. So I imagine that maybe things are similar in Red Deer, and it's hard to come back from that.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is an uphill battle. We do have a very sadly a very quiet historic downtown. It's beautiful, but there's a lot of vacancy right now. We've got a great downtown business association that is working really hard to generate activity. They've 2 blocks north of us. They've created a Alberta's first entertainment district. So that's very fun. They've got a street that's licensed, and there's multiple restaurants on that street, so you can go out and walk along the patio, and they've got entertainment and things happening. Um, the Arts Council has moved to a storefront a block away from that, and we're a block away from that. So I feel like there's an opportunity for us to create an arts and culture district. There's lots of galleries. The Symphony has their offices right across the street from me. The Red Deer Symphony Orchestra. So I think it's just a matter of getting these groups together and really rallying around what a community of artists can bring um, a, to a neighborhood. We've seen that in Toronto a ton of what arts and culture can do to gentrify a neighborhood and bring it some life and energy, and I think that there's lots of opportunity here for this community to do that.
Absolutely. Now, for you've been involved with theater on a production side for a number of years, as well as being an event planner, and also creating activations for events. um, as far as all of like the events side of your world goes, what is the relationship like? How close do you see theater and the events space? Like, are they very closely aligned as far as like ethos, or are they worlds apart?
Oh, they're very closely aligned. Honestly, um, I would say at least 75% of the people that I know who are successful in the event space came from theater. They studied theater, they studied design, or they were actors or the performers, or um, lighting techs in theater, and their first love is theater. So any you throw a dart in an event space and you're going to hit somebody who's involved in theater. Like it's just, that's the way it is. So so they're very much aligned, and that's why this just felt like the right choice for Creative Twist, because I can approach this space as a theater creator and understand what the theater creators need, and the not for profits, because believe me, we've been there. You know that, Phil. What they need to make a space viable and make a production viable. Um, but then I can also approach it from a event perspective in for a wedding. How can we transform a space and tell stories in this space that are about a person as opposed to like about a couple and their journey versus a story off a script. So yeah, it's events and theater are really symbiotic, and I think I'm so excited about having my this is kind of like the penultimate uh, part of my journey is finding, if that may be not the right word, but finding that those two worlds coming together so beautifully in a space like this.
Yeah. Now, Creative Twist is as I understand it, you don't necessarily plan the events, although you can. But a lot of what you have done in the past is create what's called activations. Can you talk about what an event activation is?
Yeah, so sometimes I get involved with like all the planning details of an event, and sometimes I just get brought in um, to add a layer of experience to the event. So whether that's bringing in characters to animate a space on a theme, or to bring in staff and we do uh, a craft station, or give away swag in a unique way, or we do an art installation, a collaborative art piece. I've done that many times, often in the last couple of years, doing that for the city of Red Deer, doing activating uh, a square just off of downtown here with collaborative art, where we've got people coming in and they create a piece of a larger art piece, and it all comes together. And so that's a lot of what I like to do is finding ways to bring people together to collaborate on something, or to um, tell tell a story through through experiential elements in a space.
Now, there are two parts of your story that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
We can talk about. I want to talk about your journey to the theater second. I want to talk about how you got into events. What was that? How did you start, and how did you find your way to doing events?
Yeah. So I went to Red Deer College. I took the hospitality and tourism program. And part of that was just because I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. And they had a 1 year certificate program. And I had met the chairperson of that program. I thought she was great. So I thought, okay, well, I can do that. Let's take this 1 year certificate, get a job, figure out what I want to do with my life, and then, go back to school. Well, I love the program. Ended up staying for the 2 year diploma, and then just kind of got into the industry. I started working in hotel, and then from hotel, I pretty quickly moved up in ranks, and like I was a director of sales by the time I was 24, um, and then I had the opportunity to move to Toronto, and there I decided that I was ready to move away from hotels and wanted something a little bit more creative. So I got a job working for a catering company, doing offsite catering, and it was one of the bigger, more uh, influential catering firms in Toronto at the time, and I just got to do really cool events, and that's sort of where I learned the event thing. And then from there, I got an opportunity to. I got headhunted to move to a destination management company, which is a company that is, their role is to be the local experts for large conferences and conventions that are coming into the city. So I got hired as a senior planner, to plan all of the tours and activations and, um, you know, like welcome party, streets of Toronto, streets of provinces of Canada, welcome party, or the closing galas with, and buses and tours, and so it's huge learning curve. Um, and then from there, I moved to a decor and design company that specialized in large scale events, did events all across the country. Um, and when I was the director of sales there. I was kind of as high, I'd been there for 8 years, about as high as I could go in that company without marrying in. I decided to take the leap and start my own company. So
And
yeah.
starting your own company, was that a difficult choice? Was it a frightening choice? What was?
Yeah, it was because I was very loyal. I was very loyal. I didn't want to, I was worried about my customers. I was worried about my my team. I was worried about leaving people in the lurch and making the leap, and you know, fate stepped in, and there were some things that made the choice a little bit easier to leave. And then I just was like, I'm ready. I'm ready to do my own thing. I'm ready to be my own boss. And then I realized, after I did the leap and started and got things going, I realized I really wasn't ready. But now then you're there and you're just making it happen. So yeah, I had a lot of learning. It was, you know, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart.
You
It's
know what's
yeah.
kind of funny about what you're describing is it sounds like the in some ways the origin story of every theater producer I've ever met who started out in fringe, especially. But it's like I thought it would be easy. It turned out to be more than I thought, and I just learned with a fire under my ass.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And like, so for the first year and a half, I was taking contracts, and then I realized that I was like, okay, well, I'm making ends meet, sure, but I'm not building my own business. I'm building somebody else's business. I'm working for somebody. I'm taking 3-month contract, 6-month contract, working in somebody else's business, and I'm not building my own thing. So then, at the end of my second year, I was like, that's it. I'm not taking a contract, like, to work for somebody else in their business. Everything is going to be creative twist. I'm going to just have faith. And like 2 months later, I landed Canadian Tire's national convention.
Oof.
And so that was a thing. Um, and then that went really well, and I became a preferred vendor for them and did a lot of events for them. And then I had other companies bring me in to be like the creative director or the creative piece. They would look after the logistics, and I'd look after the creative and design. And it just started to build. Yeah.
Um, as far as I mean, one of the things that this sort of like dovetails into your theater. Sorry, a lot of the activations and a lot of people that you worked with were like theater people.
Mm.
Lots of things, both people that you worked in from various aspects, and just people that you've encountered, buskers and
Yeah.
clowns and just like all over the place. Um, that's sort of like, was that something that you started to think of? I know that activations were not, you didn't invent them, but like as far as like taking these people that you had encounters with that you'd worked with and like bringing them into the events world, was that something that just was a no brainer for you, or did you like, how did that come about?
Um, I think it became it was a bit of a no brainer because I always believed that you know an event was better if there were non-static elements to it, right? So um, if you could have somebody help you guide your guests along the journey, or interactive, make it more impactful, more memorable. So um, pretty much when I was working uh, at the catering actually it started at the catering company. I remember we were doing an event, and I actually reached out to some friends who, because my husband was an actor and a director, and we knew lots of actors, and I wanted to have somebody activate the space and dress in lederhosen for this winter food station, and we had a train going around, and so I reached out to some friends and found somebody who was willing to do that, and then we had another event where we were doing a winter wonderland, and we wanted living statues. So I hired a bunch of actor friends, and we got them all in costumes, and they basically just stood in vignettes all night as freeze pose um, living statues, and it was a great thing because these actors were um, happy for the work, happy for to get paid. I'm not asking to volunteer. I'm actually giving you money to do what you do, and but it just brought our offerings as a company when I was with the catering company, and when I was with the decor company, to another level. Right, it differentiated us from what other people were offering, because we were adding these interactive elements, and and then I also realized that if we were doing like an activity station, instead of hiring just regular staff, I'd hire actors, because they were much more outgoing, much more friendly, much more interactive uh, with the guests, and that brought it up to another level. The guest experience was better. The feedback was always better, because um, they had a memorable experience. They had a photo up with a lady dressed as Marie Antoinette, or we did walk living vines walking through the space, and it's so fun to be creative when you're spending somebody else's money too, right? Unlike theater, where you're like on a budget, and you
Yeah,
can't
yeah, yeah.
can't do in corporate events, and in events, you can be um, a little bit more creative, and you know outside the box, and push the
Right.
boundaries a little bit, which is super fun.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I want to talk about how you found your way into the theater world. Was that something that happened? Were you interested in theater at the same time that you were going through events, or did that come later? How did you find your way into like producing theater and things like that?
So I auditioned for the theater program at Red Deer College, and I didn't get in. And so that's why I went to the 1 year hospitality program, because I was like, well, geez, now what do I do? Because I thought I was going to do theater. But but I didn't get in, so my path took a different route, until I met my husband, who is a theater person, and then we just started, you know, producing shows because he wanted to create theater. He wanted to, you know, people were asking him to direct things. People were asking him to help them create things, and I was not really one to sit on the sidelines. And I was like, hey, you need marketing. Hey, you need logistics. Hey, and because that's what I did. So I would just bring those things to the mix. And then I dabbled too. I was doing improv, and I studied clown, and, those were sort of my forays uh, into stagecraft. And I did some designing, and I did a little bit of directing, and um, yeah, but mostly it's Richard. It's his fault because he
It's good to have somebody to blame specifically, isn't it?
oh yeah, but you know what? It's also because I'm just nosy, and I couldn't not insinuate myself in what was happening, because I knew I could help and make things better. And yeah.
I mean, as far as the theater world, you were involved with theater sports while it was around,
Yep.
and you were, Keystone Theatre would not have existed without you and Richard, and so many other projects that you were involved in, both ones that I know about and ones that you did on your own. As far as the producing part, was producing easier to you because of the events experience,
Oh
or
yeah.
was it? Yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because I already had some understanding, of things that needed to be done, logistics, and marketing, and also, I think that I had a different perspective on things. So my approach to fundraising was a bit different. My approach to sponsors, um, I was able to take from my experience in the corporate world versus, you know, just from a theater not for profit lens, which was helpful.
sometimes, the theater world can be, as wonderful as it is, having an outside perspective on things like operating as a business can certainly be helpful. Because as artists, we don't often think of that aspect. We're just like, we just make it work somehow,
Yeah.
and don't think of the money or the business part. So it's important to have somebody at least who knows that stuff.
Yes, yeah, and that's like, we're just going through board development for Prime Stock right now, and those are the things you have to look for, is who you can bring onto the board to do all of that, and think in those ways, so that your creative people can be creative, and not feel like they have to, be stifled by um, that, because it's hard. I know, Richard is juggling a million and a half things, doing grants and doing, um, uh, you know, all of these administrative necessities, when his happy place is being creative.
Of course. It's
Yeah.
and that is the difficult part of arts administration and arts leadership, right?
Yeah.
You got there through the creativity and the passion for the creativity, but then there's all of this administration that has to be done. Um, and in a small theater company, and I've talked to a bunch of people who are like, "Yeah, I'm the whole team.
Yep.
I do all of this stuff." And that's a hard transition if you don't have anybody helping to guide you.
Yeah. Well, and that's, it is. And we've been recognizing, because I took on the role of acting general manager for Prime Stock, when Richard took over as artistic director. And the reality is that we've got so much going on, and I've got so much going on, that we're at a point now where we have to hire somebody, where we have to look for grants so we can hire somebody, because I can't give it its due, um, with all of the things that I've got on my plate. And then, I also have to separate church and state between, being general manager of Prime Stock and Richard's wife, and being the venue manager for Scott Block Theatre, and make sure that I'm treating Prime Stock Theatre and our, their needs with the same lens that I treat both our other resident companies, right? We have 3 resident companies, and they all need to have their fair opportunity in the space, be treated the same way, don't get, any more uh, special treatment than the other. So,
Is it difficult to divide your mind like that? How and how do you keep that division so that you can, sort of keep yourself accountable
um,
and
yeah, it's a challenge. It is, but I learned to do that when I was actually working for, the decor company, because we were the biggest and best, option in Toronto at the time, and so we'd often get, um, multiple companies coming to us who are bidding on the same piece of business. So they want us to help them design, and they're bidding on the same piece of business. And we had to be really careful and very strict about, okay, I'm going to design for you based on the information that you give me. Now, if your competitor is much more, open with budget and creativity and ideas and whatever, um, I can't let that influence what I design for you, because that's not fair to them. I need to be really focused on what I design for them based on the information that they give, and it's the same thing. I need to be okay. You know what? Um, um, I need to call you on this thing that you booked the theater from 12 to 5, but you showed up at 11:30, and I'm selling you space. So I'm going to bill you for half an hour because you showed up here to start setting up. And because that's what I would do for the next guy, and sorry hun, but that's the way it has to go. And and I have to do that because that's what's expected of me, and that's
Mhm.
and I had to make a case for my ability to do that,
Mm,
when I pitched, because they knew I was upfront,
of course.
with them. Yeah,
Yeah. Now, one of the challenges of recent years is you're involved with the theater, both with prime stock and otherwise,
yeah,
and the events industry in 2020. And 2020, as we all know, was a terrible year for both.
yeah,
Um, and um, you're weathering this, both when you left Toronto for Red Deer and then started building that the trying to figure out, like, how do we exist with these things in this new place or this old place that's
yeah.
new again. um how do you weather that? How did you weather that? What was that like? What was the situation at the time?
It was nothing good. It was all necessity, So we were in Toronto when the pandemic hit. We didn't have much going on in terms of theater, um, in at that point in time, but certainly my event business went from, a going concern, live events, to, oh my god, I have nothing, and big pieces of business walking away. So I had to pivot, to use that overused word. So I started, doing virtual events, started a virtual event venue, found ways to navigate my life that way. Richard was also working in hospitality. He was working at a hotel, so he lost his job because there wasn't work for him, in hotels, because nobody was traveling. Um, And then in November 2020, my mom passed away, and it became apparent that we needed to move back home to help my stepdad stay in the house. Um, and, you know, because of the circumstance with the pandemic, I had readjusted my business to be like 99% virtual. So I was able to pick up and move across the country in the middle of a pandemic and still keep my livelihood because I was still doing virtual events. Um, uh, and then, so that was, we moved in March of 2021. And pretty immediately after we moved, Richard reached out to the various communities here in Red Deer. We both joined the Arts Council. I joined as Creative Twist. He joined as Richard. We both joined. I joined Tourism Red Deer. I joined the Chamber of Commerce because we were like, well, we're here. We're going to go all in and be part of this community. We just need to embrace the community. So Richard had an opportunity to get involved with Prime Stock Theatre pretty quickly, and they were going to come back and do. They missed their 2021 or 2020 season, but they were going to come back and do their outdoor Shakespeare in 2021. So he got involved with that, and yeah, we just you know, tried to engage with the community as much as we could, and I still had some business happening in Toronto, some clients that I was able to work with, and I got a great project here for the city of Red Deer, activating uh, the uh, a new master plan community, Capstone, activating 30 events in a month for them, doing art classes and collaborative art projects and dance classes and having bands and different things. And yeah, we just figured it out.
Yeah. Um, Now, as I mean, you grew up in Red Deer, right?
I did.
So, having left Red Deer, I mean, you lived in Edmonton for a while.
Yeah.
But then like leaving Alberta, going to Toronto, and then coming back to the town where you grew up. Um, I'm sure that a lot has changed, and you've changed, and you're doing something very different than when you were there. And you mentioned before we started about trying to figure out like what is who's Kim in Red Deer, who's like what's
Yeah.
Creative Twist in Red Deer. Um, what have you learned so far about Red Deer, about yourself, about coming home? What have you learned?
Um, what have I learned? Um, I've learned that this town is a lot the same and a lot different. I've learned that that I still have uh, a soft spot in my heart for this town and this community. I was really surprised by how much art there was, how much mostly and it is mostly visual art here, but there's a lot of it. And there's a like a really passionate arts community. Um, I I'm figuring out that at this juncture in my career, I've been in the industry for 30 years. Um, I'm at the point of I'm wanting to give back. I'm wanting to be a leader. So connecting with my tourism bureau and how can I help? How can I take my 30 years of experience and my destination experience, and how can I help um, you achieve the goals that you've got for growing this city? And the same with this with working with the city and the master plan community, and how can I bring um, this experience that I have to the table, and help you um, achieve your goals. Yeah, so that's sort of where I'm at now.
Hmm.
Is how can I how can I use my skills for good, and help things, with the revitalization of downtown, and the you know like it's super cool. Like, now I'm on the first name basis with the mayor. Like, like he sees us across the room, he's like, "Hey, Kim and Richard," like it's
Nice.
because we have shared uh vision
Mm.
for the possibility in this town. And the leaders from the chamber, and they know me, and they're like, "Hey, God, what are you doing now? Wow, you've got another thing, you're fingering another pie, Kimberly." And I'm like, "Well, I'm just seeing where I can be of help."
Speaking of vision, I'd like you to cast your mind forward in an imaginary fashion,
Yeah,
a few years in the future. Um, as managing this theater, and the street, and being part of the street that you're on, the downtown that you're on.
yeah,
What do you envision the Scott Block Theater uh, could become, could be, and what effect could it have on the street in your ideal vision?
yeah. I think in my ideal vision, the Scott Block is a hub um, for entertainment, for gathering, for celebration. So I don't want to turn it into a roadhouse. I do want it all to be, you know, um, uh, art and culture and events that happen, um, because there's a connection to Red Deer, because there's a connection to the energy of downtown. Um, but I do want it to be a busy place. I do want people to seek out opportunities to use the space for gathering and for celebrating. Um, I would love to see us become a bigger part of an arts and culture district. Um, instead of an entertainment district, like, just grow that a little bit more. Build off of it and grow more. There's a beautiful um, two space theater, like, literally around the corner from me, that has been mothballed for 3 years because it's owned by the Polytechnic, and they don't know what to do with it. They've shuttered their theater program, and it's this lovely space. And, you know, I don't mind if it opens. I don't like competition. Fine. Bring back the energy in downtown. Bring back the opportunity for more of these groups to use space, and bring people together, and share their passion for storytelling and art. So
There's
yeah,
something about an empty theater, and thinking of it as like if that was to open, like it wouldn't just like be competition, but it would also be like another way to revitalize and to be like, oh, there's more art here. More art means more art. More theater means more theater. It all sort of like creates
absolutely.
an Ouroboros of theatrical delight, as you as a
Absolutely. And
yeah.
there's, uh, then there's more people coming downtown, and more people looking for a place to go for dinner before a show, more people looking for a place to go for a drink after a show, more, maybe more people, if there's a couple of good things happening in a weekend, you've got hotel rooms because people are gonna stay and go see a show at the Wellaquicklad and a show here, or they're gonna go, like, we're looking at expanding the Shakespeare in the Square, or Shakespeare in the Park, Bard on Bower Festival, uh, this summer, to have an indoor component, because then can we talk to tourism about creating a package where people come to Red Deer and they stay and they eat and they shop and bring more dollars into the downtown core, and is that going to help the little cupcake shop that's next to me, right? Or the artisan market that's 2 doors down, right? To have more people in the area stopping in their shop, right? I hope.
That's great. We're almost at the end of our time. So Kim, thank you so much for joining me, having this conversation. I can't wait to talk to you in a couple of years and see what's happening in Red Deer. It sounds very exciting to be like helping to like be part of revitalizing an area.
Yeah, it's super exciting, and I'm hoping I'll have good things to share when we talk again about where we've moved to with the vision for this space.
This has been an episode of Stageworthy. Stageworthy is produced, hosted, and edited by Phil Rickaby. That's me. If you enjoyed this podcast and you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can leave a 5-star rating. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave a review. Those reviews and ratings help new people find the show. If you want to keep up with what's going on with Stageworthy and my other projects, you can subscribe to my newsletter by going to philrickaby.com/subscribe. And remember, if you want to leave a tip, you'll find a link to the virtual tip jar in the show notes or on the website. You can find Stageworthy on Twitter and Instagram at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website with the complete archive of all episodes at stageworthy.ca. If you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Phil Rickaby, and as I mentioned, my website is philrickaby.com. See you next week for another episode of Stageworthy.